What's going on, guys? It's Nick coming back to you live here from the barn. Today I just want to bring you guys a little bit of a tips and tricks video, kind of show you how to familiarize yourself with a bait caster. So I know a lot of you guys might be getting new to fishing here, or might be getting into it a little bit more, and you might have used one of these guys before, a good old spinning rod, and you feel pretty comfortable with it, but you see all these guys throwing these nice bait casters around, and maybe you want to get into these bait casters. So today's video, I'm going to show you guys some things that I do to just make sure I feel more comfortable with my bait caster, and just make sure that I'm not getting as many backlashes, make sure that you guys are having the best performance with your bait casters while you're out there. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is making sure that we have the line correctly on the spool here. So a couple things you can do to make sure that the line's nice and tight on here. Take your thumb and try to dig it in the line and see how it's not moving at all. I can't get any sort of play. That's what you want. You want it to be nice and tight on there. You don't want there to be any play in the line. Same thing on this one here. I put my finger in here. I can't get the line to shift at all. Now if it's loose, you'll feel the line shift back and forth. You won't be able to move it at all. You'll be able to move it a little bit with your thumb. You don't want that line to move. You want that line to be nice and tight. So if you guys want a separate video on just how to actually put the line on the reel, I'd be more than happy to make a video on just how to actually spool the bait caster itself. So if you guys want to see that video, leave a comment down below, and I'll make a video here on just how to put the line on the bait caster itself. But this video is going to be specifically on how to just make yourself more comfortable already having the line on here. I will say one other tip. If you guys are going out and buying a new bait caster, most of your sporting good places, they'll actually spool the line on here for you, so you don't even have to do it yourself. I don't have a spooling station at my house, so I tend to do that a lot, and it makes it easier that I can just buy the line that they put on the reel instead of actually going out and spending a bunch of money on 500 yards of line and only using 200 yards on here, and then I just throw the rest of the line in my boat and probably never use it again. So I feel like that's a little more cost efficient, and they have the professional items to be able to do it nice and good for you. Another tip and trick, after you guys finish spooling the reel, tie on just any old lure, right? And just find something in your garage, right? Find something that you can pretty much, I tend to use this guy right here. And all I do, super simple, guys. You'll take whatever you're using, stick it into whatever you want to hold. And honestly, for this, guys, you can just use like a basic clamp. You can just use a clamp on the end of your line too. I tend to just use whatever lure I have tied up just so I can make sure that everything's all good to go. So make sure that ain't gonna come out, right? So I'm gonna stuff that in there. So that's nice and tight. You guys see that? That ain't going nowhere. And then what I'll do is I'll just take my rod, pull it tight. It's nice and tight right there. It ain't going nowhere. I'll open the bail and I'll just start walking backwards. What I'll do, I'll walk across my entire yard here just to pull pretty much all the line off the spool. And then you'll just reel it back up, keep it nice and tight. You guys see my rod tip bending up there? Keep it tight and just reel it up. That's gonna make sure the tension's good in there, and you're gonna have a nice tight spool on your line too. Just another way to make sure that you're checking everything and make sure everything's good to go there. So now that we've got the line on the spool here, it's nice and tight, you can't get any movement in it. We're going to talk about a couple different settings that your bait caster has. So you'll have this little knob right here. That knob's what's called a tensioner knob. So that knob's going to change how much tension it takes to pull the line off the spool. So pretty much what that means is if you have a lighter lure, you need less tension to get that line to come off the spool. Whereas if you have a heavier lure, you want more tension, so it takes more tension to get that line to come off the spool because it's a heavier lure. Pretty much what I'm saying here, guys, is you want to make sure that you have your settings correct on the tensioner knob. I'll talk about that in a second. But the biggest reason for that is it's going to save you guys from backlashes. Always, every single time you change your lure and tie something new on your bait caster, make sure you guys are setting that tensioner knob, okay? That is going to be the #1 cause of your backlashes, is not setting that tension knob correctly. And then the second thing, on the other side of your reel here, right here, you guys will have some sort of braking system, right? and you'll have a point where the brakes will be completely off. So you guys can see we have the brakes off at the very top, and then we have the brakes completely full down here at the bottom. So I always recommend starting with your brakes on max and then working your way up from there. With the brakes on max, it's going to prevent those backlashes. You won't be able to cast as far because you have more brakes stopping your line from going out. But that will prevent backlashes. You will get more comfortable with the Baitcaster first. As you progress, as your skill starts to move up, then you can start to decrease that tensioner knob and start to bring it down a little bit, take less brakes off. You'll be good to go there. So now that you guys know a little bit about what the tension knob is, what the brakes are, let's talk about how to cast. At the end, what I'm gonna do first before I press anything else is I'm gonna tighten my tensioner all the way down. So I'm gonna twist it all the way forward. And if you guys can see me twisting it forward, that's a clockwise motion, right? Clockwise is gonna get tighter, okay? So if I press the button now, nothing happens, right? The tension's all the way tight, so you need something really, really heavy to pull that line off, right? So even if I like drop the line, nothing happens. So before we set the tension, I want to talk about what happens with the reel itself, because a lot of the times when you go to throw a Baitcaster, you're not understanding what's actually going on. And for me, something that helped me reduce backlashes is just simply understanding the mechanics of what's going on in the Baitcaster itself, okay? So when I press this button, it's gonna allow the line to come off the spool here, right? And when I throw whatever I'm throwing, it's creating force and speed, right? So I throw it, it's gonna zoop that off the line, right? Now, if I throw it too hard and too fast, you're gonna throw the lure in the water, right? Say you throw the lure 20 feet. So the lure is 20 feet away from you, but you whipped it, you chucked it as hard as you could, right? Now, you threw your lure 20 feet in the water, but you just pulled off 60 foot of line because you threw it so hard. Now you gotta pull out all this line and reel it back in because you got a nasty bird's nest. You wanna make sure you're only pulling out the line that you want. What I mean is, you don't wanna throw it so hard that you're just pulling all the line off the reel faster than what your lure is actually going. So kind of diving a little bit more into that, let's actually set this tensioner knob first. Let's show you guys in practice what happens here. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna press the button. My thumb's not on the spool at all, not even gonna worry about that right now. And all I'm gonna do is slowly click my tensioner knob down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and see how it starts to slide? That's perfect right there. So I press the button, and now it's not falling, right? It needs me to bounce it a little bit. So that's still too tight of a tension, right? The lure itself isn't pulling the line off the reel. We want the lure to be able to pull the line off the reel without pulling too much. So I click it once more, let it go, boom, that looks better. Same thing, do it again, click, comes off the line. Perfect. Now, if I do it one more, if I loosen it even more, watch, boom, and now watch what happens to the reel. I let it go, and see all that? Look at that. See all that extra line that just came out? That is no good. That is too loose of a tension, okay? So I'm gonna fix this backlash real quick. If you guys are having struggle with backlashes, pretty much all you're gonna do is just pick it out, kind of pull that line out, because you just got a little bit of a knot in there, right? So I'm gonna get that line out, and I'm just gonna pull it through this eyelid here. And if you get it too, if you're having a rough time with it, you might have to cut it sometimes, but it just takes patience, man. Just take a deep breath. If you're struggling with it, take a break. Take a half hour, go take a shower, go make some lunch. Just take a break from it, come back to it, and I'm sure you'll be able to get it in no time. So I'm gonna see here. I'm struggling a little bit here with this one. And again, I didn't even cast it. I just dropped it on the floor in the barn, right? And you guys can see how crappy of a backlash I already had just dropping it on the floor in the barn, right? You guys can see the line's nice and smooth now. I'm gonna pull out a little bit more right there. And then what I'm gonna do is pinch right here. So that way when I'm reeling it back on, it's gonna make sure that this line's tight on here and it's not gonna be that looseness that we don't want, right? Okay? So let's get outside here. Let's talk a little bit about how to actually cast it and throw it here, okay? So we got our tensioner set up, all set up and good. And then we got our brakes completely maxed. What I want you guys to practice, very first thing, hold your rod up in the air, press the button, and then stop your lure right before it hits the ground. Press it and then stop it, just like that. You're not throwing it out, you're just pressing it and stopping it. Press it, stop it. What this is gonna do, it's gonna get you in the habit of always using your thumb to stop that line and stop the lure where you want it. So I press the thing, press my thumb. Press my line, press my thumb. The closer you can get the lure to the ground, the better. The second thing this is gonna help with is it's actually gonna help a ton with just getting you to watch your lure too, understanding where it is and how far it's gonna go. So just doing this, now you're starting to understand what's going on with the Baitcaster. You press the button, the line starts to come off because you set the tension correctly, and then you stop the line with your thumb, right? So I press it, tension comes out, and I stop it with my thumb, right? First steps, you guys got your reel set up, you got the tension correct, you're understanding what to do with your thumb now. Now we're just gonna add a little bit of a casting motion in there, and you're gonna do the same exact thing, okay? You're gonna press the button, you're gonna let the line go as you cast out. So I'm here, as I go forward, I let go, and then I press the button right before it hits the ground. Super simple, right? Me personally, I retrieve with my right hand, but I like to cast with my right hand on the spool and my left hand back here. Do what's comfortable for you. I know some guys that like to cast like this with their left hand on the reel and the right hand in the back. Do what's comfortable for you. I prefer my right hand. I just feel like I have a little bit more, I'm right-handed, so I feel like I have a little more control with my thumb there with my right hand. So what I'm gonna do, what you wanna do is you wanna make sure you're not casting with, see how close it is there at the end? That's like not even 6 inches right there. You want at least a foot of space when you're casting. That's normally a good distance right there. If you have too much space, that's gonna just be really, really hard to cast. You want a good, about a foot of space, I would say. That's like the perfect amount of distance to get your lure going. And then like I said, I'll put my right hand on the spool, my right thumb on the spool here. I'll press the button and then just do a smooth motion as you start. What you're gonna practice first is called a roll cast. So you're gonna roll to the side, roll forward, and let it go, right? Super, super simple. Just make sure when you guys are doing it that you're not just yanking it and throwing it as hard as you can, right? You saw a smooth motion, boom. See that? It went probably 20 yards or so and I didn't have to throw it very hard at all, right? And that's my brakes. Mind you, my brakes are on complete full, right? Now, what happens if you don't use your thumb? If you don't thumb the spool, that's when you're gonna get a backlash. So you wanna make sure you're keeping your thumb on the line. So as your lure is shooting off in the air, your thumb is keeping the line from coming off too fast. And then you stop it by pressing your thumb on the line, so that way when your lure hits the water and stops moving, the spool stops moving too. Because what happens if you don't use your thumb, you throw your lure out there, it hits the water, but your spool doesn't know that your lure hit the water, so it's just gonna keep spinning, more line's gonna keep coming off, and that line comes off in here, and then that's how you get a bird's nest. So make sure you're using your thumb and you're watching your lure. So we're gonna do it again. Nice smooth cast, boom. Getting it out all the way to that dirt pile way out there pretty much. And then as you get a little more comfortable with it, take the brakes off a little bit. So what I'm gonna do, I'm only gonna do one click at a time. One click, and then same thing. That's a little too much for me, so I like to reel it up a little bit. And then same thing, nice smooth cast, boom. We hit those plants way over there. That's gonna be pretty much the basics of what the roll cast is. You're pretty much gonna press the button, thumb on the line, roll to the side, roll forward, and toss her out there. Make sure you're using your thumb. I'm gonna do one cast here for you guys just to show what happens if you don't actually use your thumb. So I'm gonna put the brakes all the way to tight just so it helps me a little bit. Make sure, see how much of a backlash I get, how much I don't get. I'm gonna chuck it, I'm gonna throw it hard, like if I was throwing a spinning rod and I was just throwing it out there trying to get a bomb cast. So I'm gonna do that same exact thing, and I'm not gonna do my thumb, and I'm gonna show you guys what happens here. No thumb, and see that? it looked good. It looked really good until it hit the water. And then right as it hit the water, the spool just kept spinning. So just as I said, you don't want that spool to keep spinning. You want to make sure that you stop it with your thumb. So you see that? All that line I just pulled out, that was all extra line. So you guys see this? This right here, all this line, that all came out because I didn't use my thumb, right? So that's with full brakes too. So you guys could imagine if you slowly take the brakes off, how much more line you're gonna get to come out. So you just wanna make sure that you're using your thumb there to stop it, and you guys are getting comfortable with that roll cast first. That's gonna be the easiest one to do. And then once you guys get comfortable with that, then you guys got it, man. Then you just work on stepping up your game from there. The next like technique, I even find almost practicing pitching and flipping to be very helpful. I won't cover that in depth in this video. I can make a whole nother video on that. But that's pretty much where you have your lure, even with your reel, spread them apart, point down, and you're just flipping it up. I practice that almost every day for 15-20 minutes just to practice my target practice. So I'll set up some cones and I'll practice just flipping into my yard and hitting different things, just because it's going to help familiarize yourself with the Baitcaster itself and make sure that you understand really what's going on with the Baitcaster. So that's going to be the biggest thing here. I hope this definitely helps you guys a little bit here. Hopefully understand kind of what's going on with the Baitcaster itself, making sure that you guys are getting the best performance out of your Baitcasters here. So if you guys enjoyed, if you guys did find this helpful at all, I would definitely appreciate a thumbs up here on the video. And if you guys want some more tips and tricks, definitely subscribe to the channel and we'll get some more content posted here soon.